morning and welcome to The Guitar Effect. My name's Rob. In this video we're going to be checking this bad boy out. This is the Amp Core Deluxe from NUX. In the two videos ago I did kind of this as bigger brother, right? So this is, the bigger brother is called the Solid Studio 2. It's an amp modeler. This is also an amp modeler from the same company, NUX, except it's compact. And whereas I think the Solid Studio 2 is, as it says, designed for use in a studio, this is more for use for live, in my opinion. So what this is a amp modeler in a compact pedal. They have NUX have this core range, which is like all single size stomp boxes that are generally pretty reasonably priced. I don't know how much this is, but I'm assuming it's somewhere between 100 and 200 euro. And for that, what this can offer from a functionality and potential point of view is really quite stunning. However, it's not the easiest pedal in the world to get to sound really good. It can sound really good, but it took me 4 times the amount of tweaking on this than on the Solid Studio 2 to get tones that I was really happy with. I kept having to come back to it and tweak and tweak and tweak. And also on the Solid Studio Deluxe, Solid Studio 2, I didn't have to add any external IRs, whereas I did on this to get the sounds that I really liked. However, I did get there, and in the audio section of the demo you'll hear that. So the first thing I want to do is give you a listen to the sounds of this in a track, right? So this is the Amp Core Deluxe on one of my band Kampala songs, so have a listen. It's being used for all of the guitar tones on it. So there you go. As you can see, like, it can cover off a lot of tonal ground. So, like I said before, this requires a bit of work, but the functionality that it has makes that work worth it, in my opinion, right? So, whereas the Solid Studio 2, right, is brilliant from the point of view of, first of all, it's just immediately straight out of the box sounds amazing, and that's got huge value, right? But there's no MIDI. it has presets and you can cycle through them, but there's no way to externally control that. So if you were in a gigging situation, you could control it with the foot switches up and down, but you couldn't trigger it with any other device to change patch when you changed preset. You could with USB to MIDI, but I've talked about this before. To me, if something doesn't have a MIDI port, it doesn't have a MIDI. MIDI over USB is too new to be considered a viable standard MIDI option, right? So what's brilliant about this is this has MIDI, okay? So what this means is, and I'm going to do this, for example, one of my bands, recently I posted a video using the NUX Cerberus. I'll put that video up here. No, up here. I'll put that video up here. I used the NUX Cerberus with a tribute band that I have to the music of the 90s, so doing the Strokes and the Kings of Leon and the Killers and the Kaiser Chiefs and the Arctic Monkeys and stuff like that. And I use it with my amp head. And I use an external device to change channels on my amp head from the Cerberus as I switch patch via MIDI. Now, this, if I wanted to go direct, could replace my amp head. And the reason for that is I could use the same MIDI commands to plug into this little MIDI 1/8 inch, I think it's called, or basically mini jack on the back to select patches via MIDI. I could also use CC commands to do various things in this via MIDI. So the connections are, right, oh, and it has an effects loop as well, and I'll talk about that in a sec. So there's an in and out, just some mono in and out, and then there's a send and return for an effects loop. And then at the back here, there is a 9-volt power jack, there is a USB-C for plugging it into your computer to use the editor, and then there's this MIDI jack, right? That's all the ins and outs. And then the controls are, there are 3 encoder knobs in the front, and there is a foot switch it has a few different functions, right? But mainly it's to switch between the scenes. So every preset has 2 to 3 different options within that preset, and they're called scenes. So look, that's kind of the explanation of how it works. All of the controls I demonstrate when I'm going in the audio demo. You'll see what they do, and also at the end of the audio demo I'll go into the editor to show you how I got the sounds that I demonstrate in the audio demo, and also how easy it is to get sounds with this using the editor. So yeah, this is the Amp Core Deluxe from NUX. So let's have a listen now. Okay, so to demo the Amp Core Studio, I'm playing this guitar. This is a Electromatic Gretsch Jet, so it's kind of like a sort of more modern version of a Gretsch Jet. I'm playing into the Distortion micro from Pigtronics in front of the Amp Core Deluxe to show how it handles overdrive pedals and fuzz pedals, and then in the effects loop of the Amp Core Studio, not the Amp Core Deluxe, sorry, the Amp Core Studio, I have the Lime 6 M5 stompbox, and I'm literally using that for a bit of reverb, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 6 sounds that I've created, 8 actually, and show you what sounds I've chosen to create, and how I would use them. And then after that, I'm going to plug in the editor and just show you how I got those sounds and what like preamps I'm using and what cabs I'm using. So before I get into playing this, as I may have already mentioned, in comparison to their other product, their other new product, the Solid Studio Mark II, this took so much longer to get sounds I wanted out of it, and I had to load external IORs in certain circumstances because I just couldn't get the sounds I wanted. And even at that, I would say I'm 90%, maybe 85% happy with the sounds I was able to get with pretty extensive tweaking. It is an entirely different experience to the Solid Studio 2. It's way more involved to get usable sounds out of, and it's a little bit, I wish that the sounds were the same as what are in the Solid Studio 2, but they're not. They sound different. It's a little bit, it's not hard to use, it's not hard to tweak and hard to program at all. It just so happens that getting the sounds I wanted out of it were quite difficult. So here I'm just going to go through the 6 sounds. So I have 2 clean sounds, right? So here's the first. So that is a Fender Bassman with I think a Marshall 212 cab. And this is my slightly dirty clean sound. Obviously, this is a Gretsch, right? So there's a certain particular top end off it, and a lot of these sounds will sound a bit toppy, but this is a guitar I use to get these sounds, so I wanted to use it to demo them. So this can be very clean. But if I hit hard, you get a really beautiful, like Fender Bassman, rootsy, sort of past clean tone. That's the kind of clean tone I go for. But when I did the same thing, incidentally, on the Solid Studio video, I got a lot of people saying that's not a clean tone. To me, that is a clean tone. That's where my clean tones start at. I don't play the type of music that I ever use a pristine clean tone. However, the brilliant thing about the Solid Studio is its scenes. If I hit this foot switch, I change over to a Fender Deluxe, which sounds like this. And that is completely clean. Which is a 100% clean sound. So what's really nice about this is I have that on the foot switch. I've only 2 scenes. You can set up the foot switch to cycle between 3. I only wanted to cycle between 2. So if I go hit the foot switch again, I go back to the bassman sound. That's the kind of clean sound I would want to use. That's the neck pickup, here's the middle pickup. Really nice. And the back pickup. This guitar sounds really great through this setup. So then the next thing I do is I cycle up to preset 2, and now I've got my 2 dirty tones. So the first one is a Vox AC30 style tone, except I have it going to, again, a Marshall, kind of like a more neutral sort of speaker, because I found that the Vox cab was kind of a bit too voxy really. So here's what that sounds like. Quite voxy. It's a really good tone, actually. I like that tone. So, but say that's very mid forward. Say I wanted something that was a bit more Marshally, a bit more kind of top endy, and more sort of British crunchy kind of. This is that. Very plexy, like loads of really big top end. That's cool. So what that means is I can switch between a mid-forward Vox kind of sound or a mid kind of more mid-pull back Marshally kind of sound. It's the 50 watt plexi setting with a again, I think it's my own Celestion IR of a 212 cab. Right, I'm actually just going to turn my preamp down slightly because I know these next ones are going to be a little bit louder. So now if I go up to the third preset, I have my 2 heavy sounds. So the first one is a Friedman thing, which has a more kind of, again, more modern sort of feel to it. Actually, I didn't need to turn it down. I can bring it back up again. This will be for the heavier stuff. And on the neck pickup. This is a really fluid modern rock tone. So then if I hit the foot switch, I go over to a Marshall heavy tone, which is a bit more mid-scooped and a bit more sort of push plexi vintage sounding. So that's the 6 different tones I've picked. I'm just going to try this. I don't know if it's going to work. On the last preset here, I have the dirty preset taken from my second one again, but instead of a different amp, I have a louder pushed amp on the foot switch. So what I can do is have this for a rhythm tone. And then when I hit the switch, I've put the EQ in front and it boosts the level and the gain. That's going to be peaking, but it is possible to do and it works really well. Okay, so then the last thing I'm going to do before I get into the interface demo is just show you how all 6 of those sounds take pedals. So we'll go back to preset 1. I have an overdrive set here on my distortion micro. It kind of sounds a bit like a power driver actually. That's on the basement, and then if I go over to the if I go over to the Deluxe, not the right overdrive for this, but it works as well, right? If I go up to the dirty tone, my Vox sound. I think it's fair to say it takes distortion pretty well. Over to the plexi tone. More mid pushed overdrive into that one maybe. It is worth mentioning at this point that this whole experience is working. It took a huge amount of work, and this whole experience of trying pedals into the front and stuff was just way quicker on the Solid Studio. However, the Solid Studio doesn't have MIDI, which means that as a live tool, it's really a 1-amp machine, whereas this allows you to select between as many different amps as you want in a live scenario. I'm going to make another video where I use NUX's Cerberus to demonstrate that. But as you can see, it takes pedals well, the effects loops works well with the reverb, and the sounds are all there. They just take a long time to arrive at, is what I found. So I'll show you what those sounds are now in the interface. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so here's the interface up on screen, as you can see, right? Just to explain what the different elements are. You have the preset number and then you have the scene number. Right now I've only 1 and 2 active, so 3 is grayed out. You can change that with the foot switch controls. Then over here you have the save preset, import preset, and the MIDI list. Then you also have your modules here. So you've got your noise gate, does what it says in the thing. You've got amp, where you can choose which amp you want. Right now I'm on, this is the preamp obviously, I'm on the Bassman, which is the first preset I showed you earlier on. There's the send and return, which gives you the send and return level for the effects loop, and then there's also a routing option here to go between an effects loop and then just using the send as an extra input, or output I should say. Then there is the IR section. So right now it says user here. You pull down these, and unfortunately on my screen recording I can't show you right down to the bottom, but there's 2 more models down here and it says user and collection. I'll come on to that in a bit. Then there's an EQ section, which I don't have turned on, I never have turned on, and then there's a patch level, okay? So for the presets that I'm using, I'm just going to show you what the different elements are. So on the Spaceman preset, I'm using the bass mate, and I have the gain push, the presence push, the level bass kind of straight up, the middle straight up, and the treble slightly pushed. And so I'm also using down here, you can see on bass, if I go into IR, it says user, and on the user section of the IR here, you can see I have the Allure 65 US Deluxe cab loaded up. That's the cab that I like the sound with. It's a free Line 6 cab from the Line 6 website. I've had these IRs, I use that IR a lot. You also have the option of boosting the level and then doing higher low cut down here. There's a cool thing here where you can hit this button and you have all of your loaded IRs and you can kind of cycle through them to see which one you like. So right, using the 64 Deluxe, I can change that to Greenback, or the Who, or the A30. Don't seem to be changing it for some reason, I don't know. Oh, it's because it's on user. Okay, if I wanted to do that, I will go down here and go to collection. And now it'll demo all of these different sounds. As it happens, I wanted the Allure 65 Deluxe. Okay. Now, if I go and hit the second scene button, it switches over to the other scene, which is my Deluxe Reverb. And in here, the amp is the Deluxe Reverb. The send and return is the same. The send and return is the same in every situation, by the way. I always have the send and return at 0. On the IR, I'm using the user IR, and I'm using the 64 Deluxe, so it's the same cab. And the patch level is the same. Now, the patch level is slightly down because the Deluxe is a bit louder. Right, and then I go on to preset 2, which is my dirty preset. Same thing applies, okay? The noise gate in this one's on because it's a dirty preset. The amp is a class AC30 with the gain almost at full, the cut completely off because it's quite a MIDI sound. The cut would make it duller, would kill top end or presence. I have the level just below noon, I have the bass noon, I have the treble heavily pushed. And again, I'm using the IR here, is the user, and again, it's the Allure 90. So this is the Vintage 30 112 cab. Okay, then I go on to the second one here, and it's the noise gate is on, the amp is the Plexi 45. I thought it was the Plexi 50, actually it's a 45. Then you have the send and return. Yeah, the IR I'm using here is a Brit 212, and then when you're using the onboard, like the cab sims that come with the unit, you can use these extra controls. So there's the different mics you can choose, and then there's the position. So for example, if I go from the C414 to the U87, quite a different sound. I like the brightness of the C414. And then I can move it to the off the cone or right out to the edge. They're very subtle, those changes. So then that's the dirty patch. If I go over to the heavy patch, here I am using the amp I'm using is a Friedman HBE. There's the settings, as you can see, fairly gainy. Everything else is kind of around the midway mark except for the presence, which is pushed. And in this case, I'm using a V30 212 from Celestion. And that's the user IR I'm using. But if I go over to the Marshall sound, I have the Marshall, this is the 50 watt Plexi. And the IR is the Soldano 412. And just to show you then on my last scene, it's going to bring my gain down a little bit on my preamp. So if I go to 32, this is the Vox sound. So with this, you can see I have the EQ put before the amp. So if I go to number 2, it's the exact same settings, but the EQ is on. So it's boosting the mid and boosting the level for a lead sound. So that's with it's effectively a pedal with the pedal off, and with the pedal on, here's with the pedal off. And with the pedal on, that allows me to have a lead boost on that foot switch and the pedal, which is really useful. So there are a couple of different ways you can set it up, and that's everything that you can really see here in the interface. All right. So there you go. As I said, if I'm honest, and I should be, I was a little bit disappointed tonally with how hard it was and how much effort it took me compared to the Solid Studio to get the tones I really wanted out of this. I almost think if you can compare the MIDI functionality of this with the Solid Studio's tonal flexibility, and someone told me, you know, or even I saw it written somewhere, that the processing power in this, and this is understandable, is less than the processing power in the Solid Studio. I'll just grab the Solid Studio, hang on. So, just to show you the two. This is the Solid Studio, right? It's like a 2 stomp box size pedal. It has an input and output and stereo outs, and an input and through put, which means you can use this with your amp as a cab sim, and it has stereo outs. It does not have an effects loop and it does not have MIDI. This has the MIDI on the back, and it also has the effects loop with 2 jacks. Really, for me, and it's more compact. This belongs on a pedal board, this belongs in a studio. This is way more immediate in terms of getting great tones than this is. Great tones are in there, but it takes a lot of tweaking. And it also, I find with this, it's a really hard thing to explain. With this, you need to have some sort of an idea of the type of tones you're looking for. Whereas it's almost like with this, all the tones were inspirational as soon as I kind of selected them. So there you go. The Amp Core Deluxe from, no, I keep calling it that. The Amp Core Studio from NUX. If you're looking for a pedal board amp modeler and you have a bit of time to spend on getting those sounds really dialed in the way you want, I think this is a brilliant choice. And the main reason I think that is because of its functionality. To have the functionality that it does in a product that's this size, I think is amazing. So that's it. As always, thanks for watching. If you've watched this far, I really appreciate it. If you have watched and you've enjoyed what you've seen, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel out loads. The channel's going through a bit of a growth spurt at the moment, which is great, so I'd like to keep that up. And any questions about this, or indeed the Amp Core if you want to, this is the Amp Core, the Solid Studio, throw them in the comment section down below. I answer every comment that comes in. Well, I still can, hopefully. So yeah, that's it. Take it easy, and I'll see you in another video again soon. Bye bye.